Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Maxwell, and I am here with another episode of the Arcadia High School Creative Musical Arts and Sciences program, our live stream podcast that we've been doing since the originally the COVID-19 school shutdown, and now we are back in the end of our second week of the new school year, fall of 2020, and we are continuing this. This is our second episode of the year, but for what it's worth, I think this is something we're going to keep doing in the future. Anyway, we've done podcasts in the past, but this live stream and this element of it, I think, is kind of cool. So we're going to keep doing that. You can always find more about the program, and you can find all kinds of videos and the recording archive and all the different stuff we do, which travels off into all kinds of things, including recently some work with the E for USA project and the National Science Foundation and some other stuff regarding some engineering things. And anyway, you can find all of that at arcadiacmas.com. My apologies here. We just added one more, and there may be a few others joining us. So Elias is here. How's it going, Elias?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. And we've got Aiden and Bonham and Riley here as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So what I wanted to do today is I wanted to kind of have an extended or an extension of, maybe it'll be extended, who knows. But I wanted to extend out something we were talking about earlier today, and something that I think is um I guess I didn't realize how much of an issue maybe this permeates anyway when you talk about creativity. And this idea sort of ethics in what we do, and in ethics and choices that are made. um, I've been very fascinated personally, as just a quick intro, with where the line gets blurred between creative arts and applied arts, and and other things. In our case, this idea of the musical world, the engineering world, and all this other stuff, and even just in the context of um, the amount of engineering that goes into the music industry and like all aspects is pretty crazy. Prior to going live, in fact, we were just talking about microphones, and Bonham was talking about his preference for certain mics, for certain things, and absolutely, there's an artistic decision there, but there's a at some point somebody's got to sit down and figure out how to make that thing work, and go through design and go through prototypes, and then give it to a good musician such as yourself and say, okay, Bonham, I need you to take this microphone and I need you to plug it into your home studio or your studio or your on live, whatever it is, and go, I need you to take it through its paces and tell me, does it even do what we wanted it to do? And then if it does, great. And more likely, if it doesn't, what do you do with it? And how do you fix it? And then the other thing is an Aiden, as a guitar player who I know gets into things like effects and stuff like that. Most of the effects you use, believe it or not, those are like happy accidents. It's like they went in to make an orange, and they came out with, you know, uh, a pencil, and they're like, oh wait, I didn't even know we could make pencils. Hold on, what's this? And so all of that comes together, and then you have those of you that cross into other areas, like Riley undersells her musical skills a lot, and we'll talk about that maybe as we'll have a ego versus arrogance versus humility topic someday. But I also know, seriously, I know that you do a lot of visual things as well. There's a lot of visual art that is of interest to you beyond just musical, and I think that there's a connection there as well. The idea of how that all is going to come together and figuring that out. And then we're going to save this another topic that we are going to get into some serious depth on a later episode. But Elias, you and I have been talking recently, like literally, full disclosure, like
Yes.
an hour ago,
Yeah,
but about the idea of like, how do you convey a musical idea? Like how do you get that across, and all the different, and I mean, we were getting into pretty deep into the weeds, under the nuanced part of it, but at the same time, there's these other elements. People don't just sit down and expertly play drums or guitar or sing or write songs or whatever it happens to be, and just magically, like, even if you had the skill to do it, which you guys, and I mean, I very much mean this, you guys definitely, whoops, my water bottle just nearly fell over. You guys definitely have the skills to do that. That's undeniable. But to get it to an audience so they could hear it takes a whole nother set of parameters to be covered. But anyway, here's what I want to do, and then I'm gonna have you guys. I'm gonna be less talkative. I know that'll be weird, but we'll all be happier. Elias doesn't believe me. I can't entirely say I blame for that view, but anyway, what I want to do is I want to show just a little bit for context. I want to show part of a video that we've been talking about this week in class, just so that we can sort of have a starting point on what this is all about. So I'm gonna briefly. I hope that in the process of doing this, I do not inadvertently break the space-time continuum by showing a YouTube video. I'm going to spread this out a little bit. I'm going to show a YouTube video, part of one, whilst streaming live onto YouTube. I think we're allowed to do that. My apologies if it turns out we're not supposed to. I don't know. We'll find out. But here we go. You guys can see this, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I just broke the cardinal rule of screen sharing with Zoom in that I did not
Share your audio.
to share my audio. So I'm going to redo that.
Yes.
I know. That's a terrible.
And you're supposed to be the teacher.
I firmly believe, and I do believe in being the least important, least qualified person in the room, which is why all of you are here. So it all works out. Okay. And that's not sarcastic at all.
Says the man with the degree.
Well, you know.
We graduated.
We're just going to be argumentative now. Okay, now,
School,
here we
yeah,
go. All right. No, but seriously, I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play a few minutes of this video, and then we're going to talk about kind of where we were in class, and I want to go in a couple of other directions with it. But here we go. With no introduction on purpose on what it's covering.
Please welcome to the stage, Zayu.
We're hearing that, right? On my panel's end.
Hello, everyone. You guys have been making weird stuff online with photo editing. Well, we'll do the next thing today. Let's do something to human speech, like changing what you have said in your wedding. So let's get on to it. Well, I have obtained this piece of audio where there's Makoki talking to Peel about his feeling after getting nominated. There's a pretty interesting joke here, so let's just hear it.
But she's a.
Oh, no, out here.
I jumped on the bed and I kissed my dogs and my wife, in that order.
Yeah. So how about we mess with who he actually kissed? Well, you may be thinking, okay, we're pretty familiar with Photoshop, but we're not quite used to audio waveforms. How can we do this? Well, I have a good news for you. Introducing Project Vocal. Project Vocal allows you to edit speech in text. So let's bring it up. So I'll just load this audio piece into Vocal. So wait a second. And we have this. So as you can see, let me zoom in a little bit. So as you can see, we have the audio waveform above it, and we have the text under it. And when we play back, the text and the audio should play back at the same time. So let's try it.
And I kissed my dogs and my wife.
Okay. So let's do something here. Okay. So suppose Makoki wants to send this audio to his wife. So he actually wants his wife to go before the dogs. So, okay. So what do we do? Easily copy paste. Let's do it. Copy, paste. Oh, yeah, it's down. Let's listen to it.
And I kissed my wife and my wife.
Oops. Oops, oops, oops. Where are the dogs? Okay, how can we let the dogs out?
Yeah, say you.
It's actually easy. We can just type the word dogs here. And
I kissed my wife and my dogs.
Whoa.
wait, here's more, here's more. We can actually type something that's not here. So I heard that actually on that day, Michael actually kissed our Jordan. So
Sorry?
to recover the truth, let's do it. So let's remove the word my here
Your secret's out, Jordan.
and just type the word Jordan.
Ooh.
And here we go.
And I kissed Jordan and my dogs.
Well,
You a witch. You a demon.
oh yeah, I have magic. And the last magic I'm gonna show you guys is we're not just going to do with words. We can actually type small phrases. So let's say, okay, so we remove those words and we do 3 times.
Oh.
And playback.
And I kissed Jordan 3 times.
So there's a lot there. And we spent some time in class, obviously, talking about all the different elements of that in different capacities and whatnot. And I do want to recap a little bit of that. Just again, if we can go around just as a starting point. The same basic things I was asking in class, but just as a quick recap. On balance, cool technology, interesting technology, just the concept. What do you think?
The idea is there.
Okay, so you like the idea.
It's a cool piece of usable technology.
Okay. Okay. Who else has an opinion on just the concept of it?
I think it has a lot of potential for a lot of things.
Okay.
And it's a cool concept.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's just a cool concept.
Okay. Fair enough. Who else? What do you think, Aiden?
I think it's awesome.
You like it?
Yeah.
Cool. Riley? Oh, you're muted.
Kind of backpacking off of what Bonham said. I think that I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool, and I think that it's going to become like kind of more used and a big deal as time progresses.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. For what it's worth, that video is 4 years old, which in the world of technology development, the computer engineering and all of it, that's an eternity. 4 years. I mean, even just look at phones 4 years ago, or common devices, even streaming technology just in the computer world, let alone what's done in other things. So it's definitely different. It was interesting that for some reason this had never occurred to me before. So I was watching it this time, and I've seen this a bunch of times now. I could see that it was automatically taking the syllables of the original waveform and slicing it very similar to what we see Ableton and remixing DJs do. And it seemed they were applying a similar algorithm that has become extremely common. So there's that crossover as well. So we've talked a little bit about this as well, but just for the sake of right now, what's an example you think? What's a positive application of this?
Humor.
Okay, sure. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Or maybe okay. Let's say Disney in the next Star Wars film wanted to have a line from Carrie Fisher, but Carrie Fisher never spoke that line. They have hours and hours of footage to do that. They could
yes.
use this technology to put that in a
Mhm.
Star Wars movie if they wanted.
Absolutely. And I want you to hold on to that concept of what you just mentioned, because I'm going to flip it on you in just a second. But that's a good example of a potential positive. Anything else you can think of? We talked about a few in class. If anybody wants to maybe share any of those.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is like using it for people who are nonverbal, who use like machines to communicate. That would
Yep.
be a great way to like give them a more human voice.
Absolutely. We were talking in class about somebody like Stephen Hawking, who, is a brilliant, or well, he passed away, but was a brilliant mind, one of the most brilliant maybe ever. But because of an illness, left him essentially completely immobile, unable to speak. But there was technology. He had this robot voice, and ironically, as we were saying, it was sort of funny how that the specific sound of his robot voice became kind of associated directly with him, that people just affiliated it with, oh, that's the Stephen Hawking sound. But it wasn't his voice, obviously. The other thing, it occurred to me when you just said that, Elias, you said not people who are nonverbal, and you were saying it in the context of, I feel like people who were like, they had a disease that was like a physical one, or like they'd been in an accident of some kind and could not speak because of a physical issue. But I was also thinking about, what about somebody who is so like might be literal, might have issues with how they interact with people directly, and this might be a way to help them past that. I mean, I'm certainly not a psychologist. There's probably an
Well,
argument to be made that it needs to not sound like them for them to be comfortable.
I was
But I
actually
don't know.
thinking of like autistic people
Yeah. Okay.
who
Yes.
struggle with
Absolutely.
speech,
Sure.
selectively mute autistic people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So and artistically, I think there's some possibilities. We kind of hit on one, like in a film situation, but we were talking in class, for example, about how applying it in music specifically, the idea that you could take a performance and kind of rework it. Aiden, you were very sort of interested in the idea in class. You mentioned that you liked the idea of, like, if you could get a hold of that technology just to see what it would inspire in you.
Yeah, I think messing around with something like that could be really fun, and it could, you know, give me a lot of creative ideas of how to
Yeah.
move on with music or and really anything.
Right. And there's a lot to be said. We hear this all the time, that if the device or the instrument or whatever it happens to be inspires you and makes you want to create more stuff, then it's worth pursuing it. And even if that thing, because you always hear about the guy who's like, the instrument I have, I bought for $50 off of some friend, and it's, if you look at it, it's a terrible piece of equipment, in terms of like on paper, but it's the thing that makes me play well. It's the thing that inspires me to do what I want to do. And then you're like, well, then it's priceless. And who cares if it's technically not the best piece? The other direction, where's and I know Bonham's been chomping at the bit on this one, and I admire your restraint.
What?
Where's the problems? Because I know your
Oh.
response, I mean, to be fair, in class, you immediately, do you want to share what you said in class? Like, instantly your first reaction to this?
Yeah, even though I think it's a cool piece of technology, I don't think it should be developed or pursued, just
Okay.
because I feel like with something like that, more harm would be done than actual positive things. I mean, if you watch that entire video, they do say later in the video something about like watermarking and like or even like a security seal if they use that technology. Like there's something in the coding that can say that. But if somebody really wanted to do harm with it, let's let's just say like a terrorist wanted our president, like sent a message of our president saying something to a media channel about, I don't know, blowing up our own country or something. Like if they really wanted to cause that kind of harm and social chaos in America, they would do anything necessary, and this technology would
Sure.
help
Sure.
somebody like that who wanted those goals. And I just think because of that, and I mean, I know, I know to everything that there is good, there's usually an opposite bad, but I feel like the bad is more bad than the things that could come good
Okay.
out of this. Because
And
like,
that's
what would the good be? I mean, we've already mentioned all of the good, but there's 3 times more examples of bad things that can be done with it.
Absolutely, and I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I wonder though, and this was the other direction. We didn't get to this part in class. Is there, and I don't know the answer to this, and there isn't. It's not that there's a right or wrong, but I'm wondering: is there any kind of way? Could you realistically set up some kind of, I don't know, some kind of, I don't want to say user guide, but like almost like, is it reasonable to say, look, this technology potentially does have issues, but on the other hand, it could do a lot of really wonderful things. Could we safeguard it somehow? Could you? I mean, I don't know. Is that even an option? And then the question is, if the answer is yes, what are those safeguards? And if the answer is no, is it no because the safeguards don't currently exist, or is it no because you think they can't exist?
That like because it's completely digital, even if like say that program or whatever they were developing had safeguards, someone could easily make a copy of it without safeguards.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of what I was saying.
Yeah.
yeah, so it is kind of complicated now, where it's like anybody can gain access to anything if they
What?
really want it.
I think the biggest problem with this is because it's audio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the biggest problem with it being safeguarded is I don't think it would allow the technology to develop as much as it would have. Because if you think about it, like, how do you debunk Photoshop so well? Like, how do people do that even if it's was done really well? You can tell by analyzing it deeper. Oh, that picture was definitely Photoshop, no doubt
Sure.
about it.
Sure.
Um, um, and most of the time when you can tell something like that, it's because it was poorly edited Photoshop. Like it was, they obviously didn't do a good job. So I feel like if you do that audio wise, because if you think about it, somebody releases the waveforms, right? And then you try to debunk it, unless if you have the waveforms that they had, you can't see all of the edits that's been made in the
That's yeah, well,
waveforms.
okay. That's very true. I mean,
So you take away the visual part of debunking it. So now you can only use the audio part. And like Riley said, they could change the coding, so you couldn't do visual aspect with the coding of the audio. So you only have the audio, and if it was done well enough, you couldn't tell.
yeah. Well, no, I think you've got a really good point there about the fact that for all the advancements, there's also a risk.
Yeah,
That
that's why I'm
just
saying if the only safeguard you could put into place is to make it is to not let the product live out to its full potential.
fair enough.
And
Now,
I mean, if you're going to do that, what's the point of making the product at that
okay,
point?
fair enough. And some
Uh,
of it might be just in the exercise of developing other, and back to like the musical effects thing. Maybe it leads to some other thing that you weren't expecting, and that could be beneficial too. But I have two questions about this. One is, and this is just observationally, it seems like part of the problem though now is, so that video comes out 4 years ago. I don't know what the stream count is on it, but it's well over 1 million. There's a pretty good chance that somebody in that million looked at that and went, ooh, that's an interesting idea. And not part of Adobe, not part of Google, not part of any big company, but just on their own, started to experiment, started to put. So it's like once the concept's out there, even if you went to Adobe and said, look, you may not, you can't, this has to stop, and even if they agreed with you, once ideas take hold, and then, I mean, that's something to consider. But my bigger question is this: how do you? And I'm not, Aiden, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but only because I know your enthusiasm for the ability to experiment. So how do you go to somebody like, and I mean this very sincerely, how would you go to somebody like Aiden who, and I mean, I've known Aiden now for 3 years, so I feel pretty good at saying this. Aiden's not looking to cause problems in the world. I think that's a fairly reasonable statement that we can all make. Riley, that's funny. No, but seriously, I mean, I don't think I mean very sincerely, it's just not part of who you are. Your interest in this is strictly artistic. That's just that, and because that's who you are as a person. But Bonham and we've all, you've all brought up really good points. How do you go to somebody like Aiden and say, look, this potentially groundbreaking tool for you artistically, you can't use it, you can't have it. And I'm not being funny. Like I said, I'm not, like I guess Aiden and all, actually all of you, because you're all artists. You are truly, like how do you, what's your response to that as an artist? Like legitimately, if Aiden, if I was to say to you, hey, I'm going to send you the basic algorithms for you to play with this thing to see what you can come up with musically, because I'm not worried you're going to do some weird, deep fake, conspiratorial action with it. But then somebody comes right behind me and goes, no, no, Aiden, I'm sorry, you can't. No, you got to give it back. You got, I mean, like, what do you do?
Well, like I've been studying a lot of like medical legal law and like medical ethics lately,
Mhm.
and learning a lot about that. And there's a lot, like if we're looking at this from an artistic standpoint, yeah, it'd be really cool to mess around with and experiment with, and a really neat tool to use. However, it's like stem cell research. Like there are lots of scientists who want to do a lot with that, and there's lots you could do with that, and that would be really helpful to a lot of people. But it's also super dangerous in the wrong hands or in the wrong circumstances. So you kind of just have to put restrictions on things, even if they could do a lot of good or be super useful. It's sometimes the risks outweigh the rewards.
Okay. And that's back to Bonham's point of sort of like balancing all the good with, if it's an insurmountable bad. Riley, did you have a point you wanted to add to that, or okay? Um,
Well, like a paralleled example of that. I don't know if any of y'all watch the Star Wars TV show Clone Wars, but in the last season, the like three main characters of the story, they have a choice. They went and picked up spice is just what they call it. They're very vague and they just call it spice in Star Wars. So they go and they pick up this spice, and spice can be made into many things in the Star Wars realm. And one of the characters wants to sell it to galactic drug empire for lots of money, and one of the characters wants to give it to the Republic so they can turn it into medicine. But they don't get any money out of that turnout. So, if you're looking at technology like this audio thing, like um, you could say somebody could get this technology and they could very well sell it to people just because they're offering more money, and those people could have bad intentions. Kind of like super evil villain who has a bunch of money because he just robbed a bank, and he's
right,
going to
right.
use this piece of technology. He's
Okay.
going to ruin the world, basically make it his domain. Or you could give it to somebody else. So you have to like, I guess, like pick and choose based off of people's character. But because this is a mass-produced mainstream product, you don't have that. You don't have that kind of freedom. Like how you were saying, Aiden personally, right? You
Right.
know that he wouldn't do any
Well, not
bad with
personally.
it.
We've never
Well, not
actually met, but
well.
I've seen him around.
Well, you know, Aiden, you know if he had this technology in his hands, he wouldn't do anything bad with it.
Right.
You know for a fact that Aiden would strictly use it for musical composition or just something to have fun with. If he was, making a funny video or doing anything with it,
Right.
pretty much. Except that Aiden wouldn't do any harm with it. Um, but if you're trying to mass produce this as a company,
Sure.
that's when it goes wrong. So actually, now that I'm more thinking about it, my ideas kind of changed. If you have this technology for yourself,
Okay.
I feel like if you developed it in your basement and you want to give it to your buddy and be like, yo, look at this cool thing, like play around with it, like that's cool. But I think putting it in a product and selling it on Sweetwater is not a good idea.
Okay. To be
Get
fair,
your
that's how
6-month
No,
financing.
the only potential drawback with that, though, that I feel obligated to at least acknowledge is like the personal computer literally started pretty much how you just described it, in people's garages or basements and showing it to their buddies going, hey, I made this thing. And then a couple of those people went, we're going to put one of these someday in every single house. So I don't know what the answer to this is. And I think that's part of it. I do think also, your generation, if I can actually be the old man in the room for just a minute, you guys are coming up in a time where, like, I don't know, maybe this is just my weird view of it. I feel like we crossed a threshold at some point somewhere in like the late 90s with technology, and I'm speaking in very general terms right now. That's completely unfair to so many things, but I feel like up until about the late 90s it was a constant state of new concept ideas. Now I feel like so much of it, and I'm not saying this is bad, but so much is really about now we're refining things. And because we're so deep into refinement now, it's easier to get lost in the, okay, wait, that's a bridge too far. You know what I mean? Whereas early on there was a little bit of a, hey, it worked. And now it, that was like the victory, and that was as far as you could take it. But it also depends. I mean, what? I mean, we did the whole the whole moon, or space race was predicated on basically, technology that was originally in bombs. I mean, that's what rockets are, right? I mean, they are bombs that don't have explosives, but they're the essential technology, the engineering behind it, the aerodynamics, the whole bit. This thing, in a way, is the same to me. In some respects, this is another recording device, but on the processor end is where it gets weird. You have the artist who would go, I could make such cool art with this. But then you have other people that are like, I could manipulate somebody with the, I don't, and maybe that's just part of it. I think that, I just think it's an interesting thought. Wait, what? Riley, you had was that I've got a point to make? Share it, please.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you got?
I completely agree with the concept of like everything was kind of like brainstorming and then throwing out like those ideas into actual creations. And now we're just kind of like beating a dead horse on so many aspects. Like it doesn't even have to be technology wise. It could even be like movies. Like we're making so many remakes of so many classic
Where's Mr. Loose when we need him?
Oh my god, yeah.
You're right. You're right. Maybe if we say his name 3 times, we can summon him. No, but okay, but you're right. But okay, let me throw one last thing out to you, and this is what we'll close on this thought. It has occurred to me that for all of our complaining about things like social media and all of the screen time and all of the interactions that go into that, and I'm talking pre-COVID now, it has occurred to me that in some ways, and I know it's tough and it's aggravating, and I think we're going to pendulum back the other direction, which is a good thing. But in the immediacy of the situation we're in now, I think that there's a large part of the population of students who are getting through this in no small part because you were almost already conditioned to the I'm interacting, but I'm interacting with people at distance already. Now, granted, it was you chose when to do it, you chose for how long to do it, you chose the formatting. But as a concept, in some ways, through the through the absolute overtaking of the world with social media, we kind of conditioned ourselves to get through like what we're doing now with distance learning. I think we're also finding all the flaws in that, like terribly. Bless you, by the way. But I don't know. What do you guys think? That's my last. That'll be my last question of this podcast for this
I
week.
think the older I get, the more I hate it.
Really?
And I've noticed that over the years because, I mean, all of us, literally every single person in this podcast can say that when we were wee lads, we didn't grow up with technology that the wee lads have now. You know, I mean, for everybody except Maxwell, who was around when the dinosaurs were on the earth.
That's fair. Okay, that's fair. I tell you what, though, those younger kids had bigger sticks and better sticks to beat the dinosaurs back with than I did when I was their age. So
fair enough.
There's technology in that too.
The trees were stronger.
Exactly.
So I know I can say when I was growing up, being born in 2004, that a lot of the technology that's around now was being kind of still developed, because I feel like stuff like that didn't boom until the 2010s. You know, so
definitely.
like I was 4 when the first iPhone came out. You know,
Okay.
my brother, when he was 4, like the iPhone 7 was out or something like that.
Sure.
So, I mean, so like you can see that jump, and that was over the course of 9 years. And then the difference between the iPhone 7 and the original iPhone is very large difference. So when I grew up, I didn't really have technology. I kind of grew up with it a little bit. The more I developed in, you know, as a person, the technology also kind of developed with me. But like, and so, you know, I got my Xbox 360 when I was like 7. I was like, yeah, playing Halo Reach all day. And but I feel like once I got into like, I don't know, once I turned like 13, 14, 15, I like stuff like that kind of dissipated from my life a little bit, and I just kind of started to sit back and enjoy other things. Like when I was 9 years old, we'd go to Mexico and I'd be like, what's the point of going to a different country to sit on a beach? Like I just want to play Halo Reach in my room. And now I'm like, and then when I think it was for like my 11th birthday, I was kind of like, you know what, I want to go sit on a beach in a different country for my birthday. And
So I think you bring up again this is another good point you're bringing up, but I also think some of what you're talking about may be perspective, because I think
that's true. Well, my little brother, I mean, he's 7. He got a tablet when he was 2.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
He's been
Like-
addicted to. I mean, I would say addicted because he can live without it. It's not like he goes without his tablet for a day and he's standing on the corner being like, "Can I have some money to buy a charger for my tablet?" Like, you know, it's he's not addicted to it, but like he's on it all day, every day. There's some days where he's watching a YouTube video, playing Roblox on his tablet, on a FaceTime call with his cousin, and then also watching a separate YouTube video on the TV in the living room.
That's my
It's my little sister. Yeah.
Yeah. See, everybody here who has younger siblings that's because we didn't grow up with that technology.
We had it like I didn't have my first phone until like
I was in 8th grade.
8th grade, yeah, 8th grade.
7th or 8th grade.
And it's because the technology wasn't really like super. Like I remember getting like a DS Lite for.
Yeah, I got
a
DS XL, and I had Mario Party on it, and
but like my sister has been using my old phone since she was like, she's just turned 12, but since she was like 8 or 9, she's had that. So like because the technology that wasn't developed when we were younger is now being just given to them at a very much younger age.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's introducing. I feel like right now, honestly, after like I said, there was kind of that boom in like the 2010s. I mean, it's still kind of going on a little bit, but it's definitely died down because, like you said, there is a point where it's just like, hey, we made this thing. Let's go make this other thing that's kind of based off of this, but instead of a computer, we put it in a little skinny guy, and they developed that. So I feel, and like you said, now they're kind of just doing things in refinement, like Riley said about the movies being remade and stuff like that. I think that's out of the intention of, hey, this movie was made. This movie's iconic from the '80s, but now we have a bunch of this new technology, and now to make this film better, and it usually comes out worse because kind of the badness of the technology back then made it good. But that's a whole separate thing.
Okay, but and you're not. I'm not disagreeing with any of the points you guys are making, but I genuinely wonder if 10 years from now, if you'll feel the same way, or if you'll lump it together differently.
Well,
because honestly, if you my father, unfortunately, my mom, they've both passed away, but I guarantee you, if you were to ask them, or actually, I have 3 older brothers. If you were to ask, and they're around, if you were to ask the 3 of them to summarize the same sort of situation, but we're talking about a generation earlier, they would very likely say the same thing about me that Bonham you just said about your little brother. Because I think some of this it's what we're used to. Like we can't we want
well,
to
yeah,
think we
that
can
makes us
see the
sound like old
future.
farts, though. We're like,
No,
back in
well,
my
no,
day,
Back
I
in
didn't get a
my
phone
day.
until I was in 8th grade. This little kid got a tablet when he was 2. Like that makes us all.
that's
I do begin to feel like an old man
When
as
my
time
little
progresses.
when let's say my little brother gets a little brother when he's 9 years old, and that little brother gets an iPad when he's 6 months old. My brother's gonna be on a Zoom call with Maxwell in 9 years after that and be like, yeah, back in my day, I got a tablet when I was 2, and my little brother got one when he was 6 months old, and then it's just gonna keep on refining.
So it's all going to be perspective. I mean, you're not wrong, but it's all going to be perspective. And I think back to the original video we showed a little bit of, and a little bit of and the where we started, if you will. I I wonder if this is all about perspective. I think the biggest difference is your generation, your age group, if you will, is far now. Whether you'll do what I'm about to describe or not is a separate conversation that we're not going to get into today. We can save it for another week. But in all seriousness, I think the difference is that your age group has the ability to respond to it in a different way. None of this stuff is foreign to you like it was, say, to me when it first came out. Now, that being said, because we can't predict what's coming, you may find yourself in 10 years feeling the exact same way, like, what in the world is going on?
Well,
And
I
it might not
think
even take 10 years.
because right now, a bunch of technology, basically from like the '90s, even '80s, '90s, going into like 2015, I feel like is where everything went from, okay, well, let's stop making this thing, or let's stop making new things and take what we made and then just make it better.
Sure.
And they kind of do that refinement process instead of making new stuff. That's why we don't have a Pro Tools 7. Instead, we have Pro Tools, but they just gets updated, kind of thing.
Technically,
I mean,
2020. But no, I see your point. No,
well,
it's
no,
fair. It's
no,
fair.
yeah, but I feel like all these kids now, all of our little siblings that were annoyed because they got a phone in 2nd grade, and we had to wait all the way until we were almost in high school to get one. So, I feel like all those
Bitter
little kids
much?
are gonna be the next ones that are gonna that are really gonna boost technology and turn us into the Flintstones world that everybody Maxwell's age thought it was going to be by now.
To be honest, I already feel like that. Like the other day, my sister needed help with something on the computer, and I genuinely didn't know how to help her. Like
I didn't even know how to help
had
my
a
brother with
boomer
his
moment.
English
I didn't know how to
homework.
help her on the like fix the computer problem. I didn't know how it worked.
My
Okay.
brother
It's
can
like a
navigate
four
the
and
settings
over.
in my
Hold
phone
on.
better than I
Hold
can.
on. Okay, so Elias, we need to have another conversation. This is like because we're wonderfully tangenting.
Just gonna have a
Elias brings
boomer
up,
moment
but Elias brings
conversation.
up a really good point that is something that's always concerned me, and it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with approach, and not to sound silly, but it's the reason why inherent in a lot of the stuff I've developed for the CMAS program in all parts of the program, the musicians, the marketing, the producers, the engineers, all of it. I think that there's a skill and there's an art to knowing which button to press when. But there's deeper than that. It really makes a difference if you know what is actually happening under the hood when you press the button. And I'm not saying that as a criticism to you, Elias, because you couldn't help, your
Her boomer
sister
moment.
with the homework. But in all seriousness, I think that that's a big part of it, and I think that that is the one drawback to all of this technology advancement personally. And now I am going to sound like the old guy. It's not the technology itself. I love that. Look, you guys know me. I love this stuff. I'm sitting in a room right now in my home that is uber technologied out. I love this stuff. But I think the problem is, and I catch myself on this all the time, and then I try to go study the thing to fix it if I can. If you don't know what's happening when you press the button, you are subjecting yourself to a kind of random or an almost chaotic result that, yeah, sometimes produces some wonderful things, but I'd rather be able to do that because I chose to do it, not because that's how I have to. That's the only way I can interface with this stuff is to kind of go, well, I know I hit the blue button. I don't know what happens after that, but it fixed everything.
Yeah, like I miss being able to like open up my phone, like when it, like little flip phones and like dig around in it and like take out the battery and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep. Our efficiency and device. I mean, this is a whole nother conversation about this technology. But
If you think about it, that's how you write music, though. You pick
What's
up a
that?
guitar, or you
Yeah.
or you sit down behind a piano, or
Mhm.
you go on a sound trap
Mhm.
and start playing with the loops and stuff. If you think about it, you don't know what the outcome is going to go. You're like, okay, I'm playing this note, and then what happens if I play this
No,
note, and then I put it in a 16th note pattern, and then
except
but
okay.
if you don't know the theory, but that this music theory guy, if you don't know the theory behind it, same thing with if you press a button and you don't know what that button's actually doing, then you are going to come out with something that I mean, computer's a little bit different because I mean, like we click the A button, we know A is going to pop up on our screen, but we don't know why it pops up on our screen necessarily. So, so music, it's a little bit more chaotic in a sense, but they do parallel each other in the same realm.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I guess my point was I was thinking of it more like the difference is practicing the craft of your instrument is the knowing what's happening under the hood part. It might come together
Well,
in
no,
ways
because
that you can't predict.
I'm
but I
saying
think,
like I can't play piano,
yeah, you could.
but
if you wanted to, you could.
if I wanted to learn
Easier
the
than it
motor
looks.
skills, that's if I wanted to learn the motor skills, but I'm always playing these dudes. Anyway,
Anyway, but more importantly, and
If you
and
don't
then
know-
we are gonna close out. I'm gonna ask you guys to go around with one last thing. More importantly, the bottom, it's that you would know. Wait a minute.
well, no,
I need a
here-
piano sound in this song.
No,
That,
here's
to
what
me, is
I'm
the bigger
here's what
issue.
I'm saying though. Here's kind of something a little bit confusing about it though, and a different side of it. I don't know how to play piano, but I do know all of the notes. I do know scales, and I know enough music theory that I could essentially program piano. Now, if you think about it that way, if you think about it, I know memorize the coding for how to play piano.
You know the
But
piano,
I don't
even
know,
if you can't play.
I don't know how to make the piano, right? That's what like this voice technology that the dude was doing.
Okay.
He figured out how to make the piano. He probably
Okay.
knew all the steps that he had to go to, and then he figured out how to make the piano. Now somebody else who knows also how to play piano, but you made it for them. You gave them this platform. It's like those people who take songs and they do jazz reharmonizations of them because they know enough about the coding to completely change it and get the same product. That's what the danger behind the voice program could be, because this person, they knew this stuff and then they made it, and then somebody else, all that stuff's been done for them. All they have to do is just take what that person made and then change it, and then it could be for the better or it could be for the worse. Same thing like plugging in guitar pedals and and things like that. It could be for the better, it could be for the worse. Maxwell's frozen.
Rip Maxwell.
He's entered. I broke Maxwell.
Oh, nice.
Oh, there he goes. I'm the host
Bonham
now.
is the host now.
Welcome to
Looks
my
like you have to end the
podcast.
podcast.
Welcome
I
to
don't know how to
Bonham's
do that.
podcast.
Are you? So is it still streaming the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah.